When these emotional predators rear up, our conflict about our relationships, our fear of making people angry at us, the nervous system sees this as a predator to your life and is going to defend you. You get a crush of fatigue. You get a migraine. Your back goes out. Now you're in your bedroom. You've canceled that thing that contains the predator. Our nervous systems will keep us right there. And I call that safe in the unsafest way. In the bed, away from life.
Hey guys, I know that far too many of us have been there, like Googling symptoms at 2 a.m. and clutching a heating pad like a life raft and thinking, like, what, is this suffering just my life now? And my guest today knows this feeling well from both sides as a trailblazing mind-body therapist who has helped thousands of people recover, and as someone who's gone through this herself, once told that she would never live pain-free again. If you're tuning in for the first time, I'm Raelan Agle, and this is where we dive into real, unfiltered recovery stories from ME/CFS, long COVID, chronic pain, and many other life-disrupting conditions. And I've interviewed about 230 people so far, and counting, who have reclaimed their lives. And I'm here to continue to share these stories exactly as they happened. So no fluff, just the truth of what actually helps. And today I am thrilled to be joined by the epic Nicole Sachs, who for many will require no introduction. But if you're new to her story, at just age 19, Nicole received a life-altering diagnosis of a degenerative spinal condition and told that she would forever be in pain and never be able to have biological children. And when the conventional medical system's best offer was spinal fusion surgery that didn't even guarantee that her intense pain would go away, this launched her into a life-changing search for answers. And her search led her straight to the legendary Dr. John Sarno, a pioneer in this area of work, and now armed with his teachings on the brain science behind mind-body medicine, she became chronic pain-free and gave birth to 3 beautiful children without any complications. And then incredibly, Nicole went from a patient of Dr. Sarno's to become a colleague of his, regularly lecturing with him at NYU and supporting his patients at her private psychotherapy practice. And now, for over 2 decades, Nicole has helped people break free from chronic pain, long COVID, and a long list of other chronic conditions through her private practice, her podcast, retreats, online offerings, and her latest wildly popular must-read book, Mind Your Body. This is an interview not to miss. She's here right now to share why chronic symptoms actually aren't your enemy. They are your messenger, and she's going to teach you how to learn from them and how to get past them. I couldn't possibly be more excited for this discussion, so let's dive in. Nicole, oh my goodness, so amazing to have you here. Thank you for doing this.
Thrilled to be here.
I just finished reading your book twice. It is, I started with the audiobook and I listen while I'm running, but then I had to keep stopping because there's so many things I wanted to bookmark and write down, and I wasn't getting any running done. So then after that, I got the Kindle and I bookmarked literally a couple hundred things. And I have to say, I think just even for humans, any human on planet Earth, this is mandatory reading. But for anyone, like people subscribing to my channel who are facing long COVID and ME/CFS, I have read all the books, and I have not found one that is so compassionate, is so clear, that sums up the science in such a relatable way and just drives it all home. Even for me, so many things were clicking. So absolutely incredible. So just wanted to get that out there.
Thank you. I can't stop smiling. The reason that kind of stuff means so much to me is I worked so hard on this book, and it wasn't just the writing of it. It was the 20 years that led up to it. It was the fact that this is truly 20 years of best practices in one place. And it means so much to me that it's landing with people, because For the first time in my entire career, it's not like, oh, just go listen to this podcast episode and they get, 45 minutes of like some small piece of information. And I know that's so valuable. It's one place where everything lives. So anyway, my permagrin for your receiving of my work. Thank you.
And as I went through it, because when I was reading it for the second time, I knew that you were coming on the show here. And I thought, and I kept bookmarking things. I'm like, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about that. So I have about 97 things queued up. Essentially, I just want you to read the book right now from start to finish, which I know you can't do.
Right.
But so we'll cover what we can. So the first question I would love for you to answer, because I think you can do it better than anyone else I've come across, is it's such a complexing thing for so many people, understandably, because I think a lot of us are getting caught up on understanding, okay, this is how symptoms are created. Okay, they're meant to alert us to things. They're not just here to make our life miserable. All right, I'm touching a hot stove. I feel pain. I know to pull my hand away. There's I can put that together. It's a pretty easy detective situation. Like, okay, I get that. And then we sort of transition them over to, okay, now, so you have long COVID symptoms, and it could be because of some childhood trauma that you didn't process until this point. And they're thinking, wait a minute, like, what kind of detective do I have to be to put that together? Like, what does my brain think that I am, that I would make that connection? So explain for us, what is happening there?
I will try to be as succinct as possible, because you're right. Any of us who are students of this can take this, and this whole question could be the entire interview. But let me see if I can boil it down. Here's the best way I start with people. What I am teaching you, you already believe. So it is not as alien as you might think. So I could be lecturing to a room of 1,000 people, and I could say, raise your hand if you've ever had a stressful day and gotten a headache. Every hand in the room will go up. There is not a person I've ever met alive that has said, I haven't experienced a tension headache. I haven't experienced, something that is caused in my mind by the fact that I was overwhelmed and I got a headache and I had to lay down and tap out. And I say, okay, keep your hands up if you ran to the emergency room that night for a CT scan of your brain, sure that you had a brain tumor. And everybody laughs and they put their hand down. And I say, you see, you already believe what I'm about to teach you, which is that emotional stimuli, stress and overwhelm, can cause a physical reaction. Your head hurts. It doesn't make people panicked. They're like, oh God, Jesus, I gotta take an Advil, go to bed. That is what I'm saying. It's just in a much grander scale. It's the same thing if you've ever heard someone in a panic break out in hives. Emotional stimulus, physical response. And then, of course, the most ubiquitous one, when we're really sad and we're really moved, water falls out of our face. We literally cry. An emotional stimulus leading to a physical reaction. So we are a mind-body system. Everybody knows it. So there's nothing to be uncomfortable about when you hear the stuff that we are discussing. But yes, it is very confusing when things become chronic. So having said that, I'll move on to the next thing that I think is really important for people to understand. There are many processes in the human body that are unconscious, and thank God. Among them are keeping your heart beating, circulating your blood, breathing, respiration. These processes are automatic. They're reflexive. It has nothing to do with anything we think. Another process that is exactly like that is the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. When you touch a hot stove, you pull it off. That's flight. You don't think about it. You don't consider your options, because if you did, as a species, we would be extinct. We need those unconscious reflexes to keep us alive. Just like beating of your heart. But here's the thing. Unfortunately for us, as we have evolved, because we are a social species, because it is as important, or was, I guess, at the dawn of our species, to be loved and accepted by our tribe, as it was to jump out of the way of a speeding rock at your head, we have developed an understanding that emotional predators, that make us feel like we're in danger of losing our standing, whether with our loved ones, with ourselves, and not being able to, interact in the way that we would be allowed into the tribe and welcomed and loved, are as dangerous as the predators that could physically kill us. We are a social species. Without our communities, a human being cannot survive. And all of this is instinctual. All of this is built into who we are. And there's so much theory behind it. Brene Brown, many people have heard of her. She talks about shame. She talks about the ways in which we interact. She talks a lot about this. Gabor Mate, somebody else that is really big in our field, talks about the conflict between attachment and authenticity. We want to attach to the tribe, but we also want to be authentically us. It's so hard to meld those two things. So all that to say, when these emotional predators rear up, our conflict about our relationships, our fear of making people angry at us, our fear of taking up too much space, and we become people pleasers and we want everybody else's needs to be before our own, perfectionism, all these things that are so normal. The nervous system sees this as a predator to your life and is going to defend you. And pain, by its very nature, is a protective posture. So if out there in the big bad world, it is dangerous, I put it in quotes, because, there's a trigger, your boss is unkind and reminds you of that bully in third grade, that stuff you've never dealt with, or, you're going to go to the family reunion and Aunt Edna's going to be there who always criticizes you and you just can't take it one more time, right? That's emotional predators. They build up, they switch you into fight or flight, and then what happens? You get a crush of fatigue. You get a migraine. Your back goes out. Now you're in your bedroom. You've canceled that thing that contains the predator. And unfortunately, without understanding this complex dance between the mind and the body, our nervous systems will keep us right there. And I call that safe in the unsafest way. In the bed, away from life. But when we understand this process, we can do the work, I'm almost done, to put a ladle in our emotional reservoirs and bring them down so they're not constantly triggering us into fight or flight. And that's the way people resolve their chronic issues.
I have not stopped talking about the emotional reservoir since I read about it in your book because it's such a great way to explain what's happening. Because many of the people I talk to, it feels very daunting. It feels like you have to resolve every past trauma you've ever had. You have to be a Buddha on the mountain. You have to have this perfect level of calm and peace. Otherwise, you're never going to get better. And that in itself puts you in a tailspin. So if you could explain a little bit more about the emotional reservoir, I think that's just a really helpful thing for people to visualize when they're walking through this.
Yeah, and actually after what I just said, it's pretty easy to move into it, because if you picture all of these things we just talked about, these emotional predators, you have to understand, and this is why you have to have a ton of compassion for yourself and for anyone that's struggling with anything chronic. These processes are unconscious. They are just as unconscious as the beating of your heart or the circulating of your blood. So let's say you're walking through your day, right? And you have kids, or you have a job, or you have a partner, relationships, friends, your body, you look in the mirror and that could be a predator because you don't like yourself. There's so many things that are emotional inputs. There's only so much we can deal with. We walk through our day, we deal with a portion of the way we feel about things, and that is unconscious. The nervous system would never allow you to feel the crushing weight of every single thing that you have an opinion or a feeling about. So what happens is you feel this much, the rest gets repressed. Repression is automatic. It's here to allow us to function in our day. This is basic psychology. And so as you move through your day, that I want you to picture like a clear science beaker that like lives between your belly and your chest. And I call it the emotional reservoir. And it contains the biggies. It contains the stuff that you really don't have time to feel. Shame, grief, rage, terror, despair. So like you might be able to say, I'm really bummed out. That's so annoying that happened. You could say that to a friend. That's the little tip. That's the iceberg above the water. What's underneath there is, I'm devastated that happened. I can't get past it. I have grief that is literally unprocessed and stuck inside me. I'm not pissed off about that. I'm enraged. Okay. Every human being has these feelings, but they're inconvenient and they are not seen as adaptive by your nervous system because your nervous system needs you to be part of the tribe. And if you're full of rage and grief and shame all the time, you are not going to be fit to socialize. And so it represses them unconsciously into this reservoir. Here's the thing. We live in a closed system. Every system is a closed system. This is Einstein. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It is transferred from one form to another. So when this reservoir overflows to the point where you're just up to here with all of those big feelings, it alerts the nervous system that a predator is afoot. The same exact feeling you would have if you look down the street and you were like, I think somebody's going to jump out of the bush and attack me. That's the feeling you start getting in your body. You don't know it because the nervous system is really busy looking for a way to protect you. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. It sends the pain signal. The pain signal is protective, just like every pain is protective. You know, the reason you get a cut and it hurts is because you need to know it's time to attend to it. But when you hurt in here, your nervous system needs to give you an alert that it's time to attend to yourself. How do we do that? Ow, my head. Ow, my back. Oh, I'm so tired. My stomach. I can't get out of the bathroom. That is protective. I know it sounds nuts. Yeah. And so when the reservoir overflows, that's when we get sick.
Another really incredible aha moment that I had when reading your book was understanding how it chooses symptoms to alert you with and why. Because I had chronic fatigue syndrome. I grew up with a mother who had chronic fatigue syndrome, and we suspect her mother had chronic fatigue syndrome. So it seemed a pretty clear and logical conclusion to be like, this is something genetic. There's something biologically wrong with me, and we need some medicine or some surgery or something that's going to fix whatever's broken that keeps getting passed down. But then it was very clear for me that it was nervous system regulation is what got me out of this. Mm-hmm. So when I was reading your book, it was like that light bulb moment of like, okay, this is why it was 3 generations of chronic fatigue syndrome. So talk about that.
Yeah, that one's a really, really challenging one for people. So I always start with this when I'm talking about that. Even at the best scientific research organizations in the entire world, Harvard, Mayo, Hopkins, Imperial Hospital in London, all the places that people really study, there's only a certain percentage of the human brain that is understood. You know, I remember there used to be a cliche, like we only understand 6% of the human brain. I have no idea what we're at now in 2025, but it is not 100%. So there is no certain reason that this happens, but I can certainly conjecture on why the brain and the nervous system choose a place that you will believe for one reason or another to send your pain signals. To me, it makes a lot of sense because if the whole point is to protect you, and if we're living with this incredible, miraculous computer in our heads that is able to, in a split second, make all these things in our body happen that are meant to happen, circulation, respiration, heartbeat, and that need to happen to save our lives, jumping out of the way of a trajectory before it hits us in the head, and we don't even realize we've moved until after we've moved. You know, these are the incredible mechanisms of the human brain, not even to mention adrenaline and cortisol. You know, how a parent can lift a car off their trapped baby, but you certainly can go into the parking lot and decide to lift a car. You know, we are capable of superhuman activities based on the workings of the human brain. So keeping all of that in mind, if the imperative is to protect us, and if we are not protected from these emotional predators, we might die in the perception of our brain, then it makes so much sense that it will choose a path, the path of least resistance, that we will believe. So over and over again in my career, several things have happened. One is, for example, my own story. So I had terrible back pain to the point where I was out. Like I could not walk. I needed help to the bathroom. I was completely laid up by the age of 19. And when they scanned my back, I have a condition called degenerative spondylolisthesis. Now, that means that my lower spine is very severely abnormal. So, of course, it made perfect sense that I was having lower back pain, just like you, having had generations of women in your family with chronic fatigue. When you came down with it, of course, Oh my goodness. Well, that's what happens. These things must be genetic. Not that there's any proof that these things are genetic, and not that there's any proof that my abnormality causes back pain, because actually it never did. But it makes sense, which is why we have so much trouble moving over to a mind body approach, because it makes so much sense that the place in our body or the syndrome that we're having is occurring based on, whatever it is that the history of our family. But I'll tell you, just because if anyone's a listener that is new, I'm nearly 53 years old. I'll be 53 in a few weeks. And when I was 19, was told I would never have biological children, travel, exercise, or live a normal life because this severe abnormality was so dangerous. Doctors truly told me I was in danger of destabilizing my back so severely that I would be in a wheelchair. So literally, a freshman in college, I am told that this is my fate. And through finding Dr. John Sarno and through finding mind-body medicine and through understanding the complexity of it, which now I spend my life teaching, I realized I have a normal abnormality. Just like you had a condition that, yes, your mother also suffered from and perhaps your grandmother, but it had nothing to do with any permanence in your own body beyond your perception of it, beyond my perception that, oh, I have this abnormality. It must be the reason for my pain. I did the mind-body work. I came upon things I needed to come upon. I unleashed that emotional reservoir. And for over 20 years, I have never had a day of back pain. I had 3 children. I exercised till the day they were born. I run, I travel, I lift anything I want. And my MRI looks the same. I have an abnormality in my spine. We all look different on the outside, just like we all look different on the inside. It has never been the reason for my pain. It was, who's to say, why my brain sent the signals there. But the point is, this is something everyone needs to know. Whatever you've been told, whatever you have feared, it is not necessarily the truth for you. And even though we are trained in our society to give away our power to experts, to pills, to procedures, to surgeries, to supplements, and they may be necessary. I do believe in Western medicine. So this is not about negating it. It's about staying curious. And it's about knowing that maybe, just maybe, the real expert is you.
This understanding of the normal abnormalities is massive in the people that I talk to, because so many people are stuck and reluctant to think that this could be something that applies to them. And when you understand that there isn't a human being on the planet, when you give them a full body scan, isn't going to find things in their brain, in their bones, latent viruses and bacteria and candida growing and different things going on. We all have it. And some of these things, yes, do need to be treated with physical interventions, but for many people, that's not the case. And it's interesting too with the symptoms, how we talk about, your brain likely gives you something that you're going to believe. So many people, when they hear my story, they're like, is your chronic fatigue syndrome gone? And I say, well, yes, but, after that, I moved into a really challenging phase of my life. And for the first time in my life, I started getting really debilitating back pain. So yeah, the chronic fatigue
Makes total
syndrome's
sense.
gone.
Yeah.
But so my brain I wasn't going to believe that because I was past that, but now I have back pain. So it's a tough thing. It's like, well, my nervous system is still there and it's still working. So yes, the chronic fatigue is gone, but it's going to keep trying to protect me. So it doesn't mean you don't have symptoms or anything for the rest of your life. It's just understanding what's going on. And I could get rid of that chronic back pain quite quickly, through all the tools that I'd learned, but it pops up in different ways.
So yeah, let's talk about the symptom imperative, because I think that's really an important thing for people to understand. So what you were just saying is the symptom imperative. So what that means is one person's back pain is another person's fatigue, is another person's migraines, is another person's fibromyalgia, is another person's irritable bowel, and on and on and on. The symptoms of long COVID, and I recognize this probably literally a week after hearing about it for the first time, and what I had realized has remained true in my working with people over the last several years, are just a subset of symptoms that I have been treating for 20 years. So brain fog, unexplained chest pain, exhaustion and fatigue, migraine headaches, on and on and on. The only one I had not heard of before, by the way, was the loss of taste and smell, which was definitely connected specifically to COVID, at least as far as I know, in the realm of my experience, that also through the people that have done my work has completely resolved. So no matter what you're experiencing, please know that there is hope. Having said that, all of these symptoms are interchangeable. And the reason they're interchangeable is they come from one source. The source is the nervous system dysregulation and the confused protection that the brain and the nervous system have the power to elicit based on these predators. If they think that there is a predator in your life from your emotional reservoir overflowing, they're going to send something that slows you down, because that is what pain does. It slows us down and it protects us, because when we're in pain, we soften our demands on ourselves. We ask for help more readily, which is something that is societally adaptive. We want to be able to ask for help, which modern day humans have a lot of trouble doing. So all of the things that pain does for us makes the brain and the nervous system go back into equilibrium because it wants you to be safe. It doesn't matter to your particular brain whether you're fatigued, can't get out of the bathroom, with a migraine with the shades closed, or any number of things, as long as you are protected. So the reason that the symptom imperative happens is once you learn about this work, the jig is up. Okay, so you're like, I see, I don't need a back surgery. I need to go into my emotional reservoir and see why these pain signals are firing in the first place. You start doing the work, you're astounded. Everyone's always astounded. I cannot believe it. I didn't have back pain today. Like, what's going on? And you get very excited. And then there's all of that joy, which is amazing. And you keep doing the work and the back pain subsides. And now you're like, I don't need to do the work anymore. And I know that I didn't want to go to that family reunion, but I went. And it's good that you went. But without a continued understanding that we're living in a mind-body system and we're just human beings, nobody is immune from this. At some point, what's going to happen is the emotional reservoir is going to build up again. And this is not a life sentence. This is just an understanding of health that I think we're yet to really, as a society, deeply accept. But as we do, this is going to be less and less of a problem. So the emotional reservoir builds up. You're not going to get back pain again because you've already been like, oh God, there's no way that anything's wrong with my back. Look, I got rid of my back pain through emotional exercises. Obviously, there's nothing structurally wrong with me. So even though I have that MRI, I believe, Nicole, it's a normal abnormality. Now you get hit with a crushing migraine and you're just like, well, obviously migraines have nothing to do with back pain. And then the brain and the nervous system have done their job again. You believe it. You get on a migraine medicine, you start changing your diet, you're doing all these physical things, which prove to your body more and more that a physical problem requires a physical solution. So now you've moved away from the mind-body stuff, and now you're going to stay in the migraine place. And that is just what happens unless you perceive this process, like we're talking right now, as a fluid process. It will move around your body. And as soon as you accept that and you know that the work is the work, regardless of where it's showing up, that's when you become chronic pain-free. That's when, you experience physical symptoms, because sometimes we feel things in our hearts and sometimes we feel things in our bodies, and they're literally interchangeable. Just like the same parts of the brain light up on MRI when someone has a broken heart as when they have a broken leg. This is, by the way, provable science. The studies are linked in my book. So all of that is true. And as soon as you understand it, you will never get chronic pain again, because chronic pain is an epidemic of fear and meaning and panic that we are not okay. And once we understand that we just have work to do, you can live where you and I live.
I finally know how to answer that question that people ask me. Are you past your chronic fatigue syndrome? I'm past chronic symptoms. I am not past symptoms.
Because symptoms are part of life. Like that would be like if you ever woke up in the morning and you're like, okay, I've made a decision. For the rest of my life, I'm not going to be in a bad mood. I'm past that, right? Or I've made a decision. I'm not going to be sad this week. Sad. No, I'm done with sad. Like, that's how ridiculous it is to say I'm never going to feel pain as part of It's part of the experience of your body interacting with you and your mind and your body moving in this dance that they do. It's never over. There are days I have a subset of symptom imperatives that are just like my guys. And one of them is a headache. Like when I am really angry or I can't express something, I start feeling it in my head. Many a time when I start feeling that, I can pause and I can be like, what's going on here? I either jump to my journal speak practice, or I'm at this point because I've done it for so long that I'm so fluent in journal speak. I can just have that conversation in the back of my mind and be like, all right, I see what just happened. She said that, and I can't speak to that because that's not appropriate. And that reminded me of exactly that dynamic when I was growing up. Okay, I see what just happened. And literally in the moment, I can get my headache to go away. And that is possible now at this point. But there are days when I'm just like, all right, I'll take the headache. There's too much going on right now. I do not have time to unravel it. Pop a couple Advil, try to get through the day. And if I have to, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to have this one till bed, and I know I'll sleep it off and it'll go away tomorrow. It's fine. Fear is required for anything to become chronic. It is required that I would say, oh my God, is something wrong with me? Am I going to get migraines now? What about that work trip I need to take? What about that thing, recital for my daughter? I'm not going to be able to make it. That fear and panic tells the nervous system we're in the right place. She is giving energy to this thing, and obviously it's working. She's not thinking about the emotional stressor anymore because it's working. She's super connected to this headache. That's what makes things chronic.
And that is the understanding that I think is so challenging for so many of us to get to, because we cling on to our diagnoses. I know I did this very much. So I was thinking of it in terms of, is my chronic back pain gone? Is my chronic fatigue syndrome? And the more diagnoses I got, it was almost the happier I got. I got diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease. That was some of the best news I got on my whole trajectory. It was just, thank you. It's solid. It's real. There are books about it. People understand it. Now I have a reason to tell people while I'm off work, while I'm skipping all social things, while I'm not leaving my house. And it legitimizes and validates how horrible I feel. And I love this exercise. If you could talk about this a little bit, I think people would appreciate it so much, that you talked about in Mind Your Body with the index cards and helping people with those diagnoses. So could you just tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's absolutely brilliant.
The first thing I want to say is, did you not love Suzanne's story in the book? That's her exact story with the chronic mold and the I think it was chronic mold and fibromyalgia were her like two diagnoses that she was, chronic Lyme.
It was Lyme, yeah.
Yes. And she was like relieved because she was like, this finally, there's a reason. And then she's like, yeah. And then when like the reason is there's nothing you could do about it, it doesn't feel so much like a celebration. Yeah, I do want to tell people that in terms of inspiration is so important in this work. I know this is why you're doing this whole podcast. And it's like the end of every chapter in this book is someone else's story in their own words. And it just helps humanize this so much, because the stories bring you through the worst of it. They bring you through people just falling to their knees and surrender, and then their awakenings of how they can incorporate this work into their lives, how they did it, and then how they're living like totally free of chronic symptoms. So it's really, every story is really beautiful, but you just reminded me of Suzanne's in that story. Okay. So the story, the example you're referring to is a client I had early on in my career. And when I say early on, I mean like the first year. The first year that I was a trained therapist, I had this client and she had so many symptoms. I mean, I think she had like 20 different chronic symptoms. She had migraines, she had stomach issues, she had skin issues, she had fibromyalgia diagnosed, she was diagnosed with multiple chemical sensitivities, which is essentially just like everything upsets you, everything is triggering you. She had food intolerance. Anyway, the list went on, and she was so terrified of her symptoms. And I said, honey, I'm here to tell you that they're all coming from the same place, this nervous system dysregulation, but I understand how confusing that is, because they're so different physically. You know, how could my stomach be my head? How could my head be my shoulder? How could my shoulder be my knee? You know, like it's very hard. So I said, let's take a moment and we got index cards. And I said, write each of your symptoms on a different index card. And she was just like, okay. So we got them all in front of us, just like a big family of symptoms. And so we're like, okay, we're looking at them together. I said, I know some of these are more scary than others to you. So if you could hand the ones to me and allow me to care for them that you feel like you could give up today. And so she was looking at them and she was just like, okay, I think I can give you the fibromyalgia because sometimes I feel the nerve pain, but I just have to admit, like sometimes I don't. You know, I go through days where I don't. And then like I have a really stressful moment and I'm covered in it. So maybe this one's mind body. Like you can hold this one. And I said, I'm willing to hold as many as you're willing to give me because I have total confidence that all of these things are coming from the same place. And when you are able to accept that and we are able to do the work to lower your reservoir, you're not going to feel any of them anymore. But I know that some of them you need to keep close because you won't feel safe saying that this one is also mind body. And so we had this back and forth where she would hand me cards and I said, I will give them back anytime you want. I have a joke in my practice, or I did. I mean, I don't have a private practice anymore, but I have a joke. I have a joke that my work comes with a 100% misery back guarantee. Anytime you want, you can come back to the exact life you're living now with all of your exact medications and treatments and elimination diets and, you know, living with no chemicals in your house. Like I got it, but like, I'm so confident that I will hold your fear for you. I will hold it lovingly for you as you're ready. So she would hand me things and she would take them back. And this is one story I never told in the book because there's only so much you can tell in one book. It's like endless stories. She had multiple chemical sensitivity and she was terrified of the gym. Did I tell this story in the book? I don't think I did. Of the gymnasium in her school. She was a kindergarten teacher.
I don't think so.
Okay. So she would, the gym, anyone who's been to like a school gym, there's a lot of lacquer on the floor. It's like a chemical smell oftentimes going into a gymnasium because the floor is so treated with like this thick lacquer. And so she said that she would have her teacher's assistant walk the kids down the hall to the gym. She didn't go to the gym. And so, like I said, this is early on in my career where I had nothing but time. And so we did one of the sessions at her school. And I was like, we're going to go to the gym. And she was just like, no, I can't do that. And I'm like, I'm with you. She said, I'm going to have a panic attack. I said, then I will sit with you and we will have it together. I said, you are not alone. We're going to go walk to the gym. So we walked. She agreed. She trusted me. And we walked to the gym. We walked right in the middle of the gym. And we sat down in the center of the gym and she was really panicked and she was starting to feel really symptomatic and really nervous. And I just held her hands and I said, tell me what's going on. And she, in that moment, was able to come to a space that she had not been able to come to, which was when she was younger in high school or in elementary school. I don't remember of her schooling. She had an abuser. I'm not going to go into the personal story, but it was a very serious situation. And that person was worked at her school. And she would go to the gym and have to go to pep rallies. And this person was beloved in the school. And this person was hurting her outside of school. And she came to this conclusion that there was nothing more of a horrible swallowing of herself, of honoring that inner child, that she had to be there and pretend to be not only okay, but celebratory of this person who was so hurting her, and that the gym had come to represent that for her. And she never realized it. And literally in the moment, she was able to cry. She was able to come to that, obviously really putting a ladle in and dumping out a huge part of her emotional reservoir. And of course, it was only the beginning of the work that she had to do on this topic, but all of her symptoms were gone in the moment, proving to her that it was never about the gym or the smell or the lacquer on the floor. And in that moment, that was a huge shift for her, because We sat there. We sat there for like a half hour, and she's like, I have no headache. Oh, my panic is, I can't believe this. I can't believe," she was weeping. "I can't believe this." And I said, "Honey, there are reasons that our body responds. And like, can we honor that? And can we not be frightened of it? Can we partner with our body instead of allowing it to be a predator?" And she got it. And this woman that I am telling you about now, I still know her. I obviously stopped working with her many years ago. She is happily married. She is totally free. She has no chronic symptoms. She had like 30 and she has none. And she practices journal speak, and she lives with this mindset, and she has grandchildren. And like, this is possible for anyone, no matter the level of abuse and trauma.
And you've mentioned Journal Speak, and I know you talk about in your book, you break down exactly how to do it and you walk people through it, and it's a lot to cover right now. But could you just tell us a little bit about this? Because I know this is your signature tool that has worked with hundreds, thousands of people. So what is that?
So essentially, in the simplest way, if we are looking at the emotional reservoir as overflowing and causing us to be in chronic symptoms, we need a tool, we need a vehicle, we need a way to get the reservoir down. Like, how? I'm not going to just feel better about the abuse that I felt. I'm not just going to feel great about going into work when my boss is like the most stressful person on the planet. Hello, my children are, complex and cause me so much worry and so much pain and so much heartache. I'm not going to put them up for adoption. I can't change my life. So how am I supposed to lower the reservoir? That's like the number one question. When I used to lecture at NYU with Dr. Sarno, that was everyone's number one question. I can't rob a bank, give up my children. I don't want to leave my marriage. How am I supposed to feel less stress if these are the things that are causing me stress? I came up with Journal Speak in my own darkest hour when I was in a terrible relapse of my chronic pain, when I understood this work, but I hadn't really understood the depth of it or how to do it. I understood the concepts, but I didn't understand how to do the work. I had seen Dr. Sarno. He explained to me all this stuff that I now carry this torch for him. And I started journaling, but I was journaling a whole lot of nothing. I was sort of playing my tapes and talking about the stuff that was going on in my life. And as I was talking about motherhood and being really tired, I had 2 children under the age of 2. I had 2 kids in diapers, 2 kids in cribs. I was very overwhelmed and tired. All of that is true. I was writing about it, and just felt like really like, yeah, I know this. Like, there's no reason my horrible chronic pain is related to something this simple. And something occurred to me, and it was a very unwelcome sentiment. And I saw it kind of in the corner of my eye, and I'm like, I don't want to feel that. And that's the thing. The dark things that we don't want to feel are the things that are overflowing our reservoir. And the first line of Journal Speak ever penned came into my consciousness, and I was brave enough to write it down. And the line was, "I hate being a mother." And it was a really stunning, shocking thing to look at on a piece of paper. I was like, where did that come from? But I knew that even though it didn't stay true and it wasn't capital T true, there was truth in it, and I needed to investigate it. And so I started to just write. And I was like, I'm terrible at this. I'm failing. I don't understand. My kids aren't the right kids. I'm not the right mother. I'm trapped. I'm paralyzed. I'm never getting out of this. I've ruined my life. And I'm writing all these things, and I start to understand as I'm writing. I'm just like telling truths that feel like an inner child that's screaming out of me. And what I realized is, after I went through hating motherhood and hating my kids, and I was like, wait, that doesn't feel true either. What is it? And then I went at my parents, like, you guys were so irresponsible, and you created a child that was so miserable that I wanted to get out of my skin all the time, and I hated on them. And then I came to understanding compassion about that. And then I hated myself. And what's wrong with you? Why can't you just be a mother? Everybody's doing it. Like, everybody can do this. Why are you such a failure? And I just let whatever was in there out. It was so unreasonable. It's transmuted and transmuted and transmuted. But I was learning a language that I was learning it so I could teach it to other people. And what I honestly came to was a epiphany that I never would have known, which was when I was about 10 or 11 years old, I made a very small, quiet promise to myself. I was an only child. My parents were really dysfunctional. And I made a small, quiet promise, which was, one day I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to have the perfect family and I'm going to have the perfect children and I'm going to be the perfect mother and I'm going to heal all the wounds of this childhood. Now, that is an insane notion and something I had no idea that I was thinking. When I got to that in my journal speak, by allowing myself to say all of these unacceptable, impolite, unreasonable things, when I came to this epiphany, I was like, wait a second. That's why I feel like I always almost cry when I tell this story because it's so powerful to me. My children are 22, 20, and 17, and I have the most amazing relationship with them. I never would have had the experience of raising them had I not come to this so young because I didn't raise them through the lens of my own dysfunction. But that's an aside. But I came to this realization that the reason I felt like such a failure is I wanted parenting my kids to rescue the 11-year-old me. I wanted subconsciously this experience of being a mother to heal the wounds of my own childhood and have it be done and done, neat and clean. And that is not the way life works. But when I came to it, I cried and I held myself in such compassion because that made so much sense. And in my story, and it's not everybody's story, after a year of the kind of debilitating back pain that takes you down, that makes you fully depressed, I could not function. I couldn't take care of my children properly. I woke up the next morning and my back pain was 80% gone, never to return. And then I said, screw this. And I journal spoke about everything in my life, about my parents, about my relationships, about my body, I went ham on everything. And I never talk about watching the clock because it's a different period of time. But within a certain period of time, I called Dr. Sarno and I said, how can I be of service? I am chronic pain free. I get it. I have to purge. I have to get it out. It doesn't stay true. I have to forgive myself for thoughts that I would prefer not to have. I get it. And he said, come on in. And I started lecturing with him at NYU. And that was the beginning of my whole career. But I have to say, this is a language I teach people how to speak. You're right. It's 3 chapters of the book. It's simple, but it's not easy. But I teach you how to do it. And when you master this language and when you can speak it and throw it away, journal speak does not stay true and it does not stay. You delete it when you're done. You meditate and come back to center. The chronic pain fades and fades until it is gone, and it does not return when you understand how to live this way.
I think this leads nicely into something else that you talk about and something that I hear because I've now interviewed literally hundreds of people who have recovered from these conditions, and virtually all of them say the same thing in different words, is that they come through this transformed version of themselves, this more authentic version of themselves. They went to hell and back, but if given a magic wand, they couldn't take it away because of who they are now. And I heard you say, I think you say it in the book, I've heard you say it on podcasts, that pain is the biggest little part. And so I just love for you to explain that, because in the moment, it feels like the pain is everything.
Yeah, I hear you. And you're right. I've interviewed hundreds of people myself, and it is hilarious that they all say the same thing, which is, I never thought I would be grateful for the pain. I listened to your interviews and I listened to, all these lectures that you've done, and I've gone to your retreats, and I thought to myself, that will never be me. I will never be the person. And they're on this interview going, oh my God, you're right. I would never take a magic wand and take this away. My life is so full and so rich. I can connect with people in different ways. Oh my God, the parent that I am. Oh my God, the changes in my career. I am so much more successful than I realized I could be. I make more money. I found love when I never thought I'd find, like, all the things that we want. All the things that we're here on this life, in this earth, and like we say are the biggest aspirations, are on the other side of the pain, because the pain breaks them open to wake up to what was really out there for them. And that's why my whole brand, my whole website is called Your Break Awake, because it is all about breaking through to wake up, breaking old paradigms to wake up into what is there for you. Because yes, I have the cure for chronic pain. It's the name of my podcast. It was the name of my brand for a long time. But when Lisa and I decided we wanted to evolve it, we're like, well, what else is there? And we're like, well, what fills the vacuum when you don't spend all of your time going to doctor's visits and seeking Dr. Google and new supplements and new treatments and new procedures. What fills the vacuum is joy, is chronic thriving, is chronic success and connection and presence, because that's what's waiting for you. So what I will say about pain being the biggest, littlest part is pain is an invitation. You don't think it and you don't have to like it. And I didn't like it either. So this is not like a Pollyanna spiritual bypassing, like, yay, I'm psyched that I have chronic pain. No. But when you start doing this work, you understand that pain is but an entry point. It is an invitation to the precipice of truths that have been awaiting your acknowledgement, and they are there to set you free. And when you get that, and when you do this work, it is astonishing what your life looks like on the other side. It's not just I had pain and I don't have pain. It's I had pain, I don't have pain, and I have 100 other things that I only wished for because I had been so repressed. I had no idea how to properly participate in my own life, and now I do. And there is nothing more beautiful than watching it happen.
I know there's going to be a lot of people listening, watching that are thinking, this all sounds incredible, but I think I might be too far gone. I think I've been sick for too long. I want to believe, but I don't fully believe. So this probably won't work if I don't fully believe. So I know you talk about this in your book, and I'm pretty sure I know what you're going to say, but I think it's an important message to put out there. So what would you say to these people that think that they're a lost cause, or that they don't fully have the buy-in, so this probably isn't worth pursuing?
I would say I'm not looking to change your mind. I would say replace your fear with curiosity. That's all I need. I don't need certainty. I don't need buy-in, curiosity. When you can replace your fear with curiosity, then you can sit in the space of knowing that maybe you don't know everything. And there's nothing more amazing to me personally when I realize I don't know everything. Because if I don't know everything, then anything is possible. So I would say to that person, I have worked with people who are in their 70s and 80s that for the first time in their lives are free of chronic pain. I have worked with people that have had 3 or 4 surgeries, that have all sorts of screws and rods in their body and they're still in pain, that do this work and are pain free. It is possible for anyone. I have seen the most serious cases resolve completely, and many of them are told in my book, and many of them are interviewed on my podcast, The Cure for Chronic Pain. So marinate in the success stories. Come and be in community. That's another thing. It is very, very hard to do this alone. I have to say, like when we built Your Breakawake and we started making it this hub for people to come and interact and have community, it was a game changer for a lot of people, because I don't work anymore in private practice. A lot of people ask me that. I feel like I should say it straight up. I don't take private clients, but I do have a community called Heal with Nicole, where I work directly with them. We do Zooms, and we do a large Zoom once a month, and I do a Q&A once a month, and I have a private community where I answer their questions every single day. So, and then they have each other, and they make friendships for life. So like, this is a really, really true thing that I do think it's hard to do alone. If you can do it alone, I did it alone. I mean, I was obviously a trailblazer, but I think doing it in community is really important. So I'm sure you're going to put all like my links in your show notes and everything, but people, you can find your people and you can do this. And the book is like an instruction manual for life. So, I mean, I just want people to have hope, because as soon as you have hope and as soon as you replace your fear with curiosity, the possibilities for you are endless. And I really mean that.
And I just want to put it out there too, and I know you address this straight out the gate in the book. You use the term chronic pain, but it can refer to so many things.
Yes.
So if we're not using your term, it doesn't mean that this does not apply to you. It can be POTS, it can be IBS, it can be chronic fatigue syndrome, it can be long COVID, it can be a myriad of things that this can apply to.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I put so many stories in the book, because you'll see, I mean, I know you've read it twice, so you know, but people will see that when you read the stories are all those things. I actually think every single thing you just listed are in at least one of the stories, in addition to many more. And so, and like, there could be a bizarre symptom, anything that you consider chronic that's keeping you from your full life. You never know. It very well might be actually in the book specifically. So never count yourself out. And the last thing I'll say is, we have to call it chronic pain because there are so many people in it, but we both know this is the human condition. There is no one on the planet that is immune to the dance between your brain, your nervous system, and your body. So some people identify as having chronic something, but some people just have a lack of joy for life. They feel like it's all supposed to be more beautiful than this. They just don't have a spark. That is also completely turned around by doing this work because you're spending so much energy that you don't realize repressing these natural human emotions that when you can let them out and when you can dance with them and when you can see them in a different light, all of a sudden you have more energy, you have more joy. You kind of want to do new things. You're less afraid. You find love. You're less walled off. Like, so it's truly for everyone.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up the psychological symptoms. That my mind blew wide open when I read Dr. Howard Schubner's book, Unlearn Your Anxiety and Depression. That, oh my goodness, anxiety and depression are just other tools that our nervous system
Yep.
has. And we can address those. And most of us think, I'm just born that way. I'm going to be depressed or full of anxiety for the rest of my life. And it's just another component, another facet. So, of course, we're going to have everything that you have available linked in the description for people to access. What I know there's many things that you have available that we haven't talked about. Are there any specific things that you'd like to share for people right now?
Yeah, the one thing I will say is that when I think about people hearing about this work, the one thing I worry about, they're like, okay, I bought this book, I've read it, and now I'm sitting alone in my house and none of my friends will really understand this. And what do I do? And this time of year, since we're talking in the spring, we are approaching my Omega retreat. So the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York is the one live retreat I do per year. It's a 5-day retreat, June 22nd through the 27th. So I just want to tell people, if you're hearing this and it's lighting you up and you want to come and spend a few days really immersed in this material with me right there with you. I have a whole slew of instructors. We hold space. We bring you essentially through the experience of the book live in person with your people that are doing this work, who understand you, who have lived for years in pain often and like really have a total empathy and compassion for this. It's just an incredible experience. So I wanted to mention that just because this time of year is when Omega is filling up and people have the opportunity to come and spend the week with us.
Absolutely incredible. And yes, of course, that as well will be linked in the description. What an incredible thing. I have no doubt that there will be tons of people wanting to check that out. So thank you for all that you do. And thank you for being here today, Nicole. This has been absolutely incredible. Every word has been pure gold.
Well, it's been a joy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope we reach a lot of people and give them hope.
I hope so as well. And I mentioned Dr. Howard Schubner's interview, so I'll link it here. Another student of Dr. John Sarno. So for people watching, if this resonated for you, that's another great one to check out. So thank you to everyone watching. Thank you again, Nicole. And I hope to see you in this next video.